TJFG.
Life's good.
Hey, it's Diane, Key, and LG, and this is episode 50 of the Now What podcast. This is a big milestone for the show, and we're excited to be here. Today's episode is going to be about the show, what it means to each of us, how it got started, and what's next. Most importantly, how you can be part of this movement and let your voice be heard. Before we get into the show, I'm asking you to do something. Show us some love by checking out our website at nowwhatradio.com, where you can listen to the show directly, stream our live DJ sessions, subscribe to our mailing list so you can be first to hear what's new. And special shout out to Ioba, Diana, and Adium for joining the movement at Now What Radio. Now let's get on to the show. Key and LG, happy 50th freaking episode.
Yeah, whoop, whoop.
Yeah, it has been a journey. And 50 sounds like a baby seedling compared to the shows who are in their thousands of episodes. So we definitely got to give them props. But congratulations to each of you gents.
But yeah, you know, Diane, we've been together since day one on the podcast. So as you said, it's been a long road. I think the audience will hear me say throughout today's show, content creation is hard. That's the biggest learning for me. With 50 episodes, yeah, you talk about, I look at some other podcasts out there and they have thousands, and I'm just like, whoa, okay, that's commitment of time and effort. So big learning, but definitely, I think, a key milestone in the Now What podcast.
Yeah. For me, I'm like, man, we got here fast. I feel like we've been having a lot of fun. And as the saying goes, time flies when you're having fun. So definitely, I feel that this is an awesome milestone for the Now What podcast, for you, Diane, for me, LG. This has been an awesome journey, and I'm looking forward to the next 50.
For me, it's definitely a celebratory and a humble achievement to reach our 50th episode for so many reasons. And when I think about who I was when the show started and how I've found my voice and two amazing business partners to continue this journey with, I have to quote the notorious B.I.G. and say it was all a dream. But most importantly, to our listeners, shall I say our real day ones, LG, you are the real ride or die, and I appreciate you.
Yeah. Speaking of day one, Diane, how about you kind of let's take a time capsule and go back and talk about the early days of Now What podcast.
What is up, podcast world? It's Diane Gill, and I am so excited to be here today to share a sneak peek into a brand new podcast that I've been working on just for you called Now What.
So in August of 2018, this idea to start a podcast came to me. I had recently joined the world of podcast listening, and I was hooked. I couldn't believe that such a medium existed. There was every type of show and topic in the podcast world, and it sparked my first Now What moment. And it was at that moment I was sitting in my hammock in my backyard, the clouds parted, and I heard the words. It was clear what I had to do. I would create a podcast. Period. End of story. Watch out, podcast world. I had no experience, no equipment, no plan, no problems. So I ran my endeavor by LG. And for many reasons, for those of you who maybe knew, he is my brother-in-law. Also, we've done business ventures in the past together. He is super intelligent, tech savvy, very detailed and logical about the execution of things. And he is a melomaniac, as am I.
Yeah, Diane, I remember you coming to me with this. I was like, huh? Podcast? What the hell are you talking about? Now, granted, you still have this cultivate with courage concept. So I think you were bringing that idea to me originally in the scope of that. So I wasn't honestly very interested at all. But as you said, I'm kind of a techie, and so podcasts, I'm like, oh, it's kind of audio. I was familiar with it from our friend Joe Budden on the hip hop side. I think actually he has one of the most successful podcasts and shows what it means to be a Black and brown owner of your content. So anyway, that being said, it was a moment, if you will. I wouldn't call it a now what moment for me at the time when you brought the idea of the podcast.
Yeah, for sure. I had the idea, I was motivated, and I was really counting on you to help a girl out. And when I saw you kind of look to your left and look up and just kind of do, like you said, with a grin, a small grin, that's it. That's all I needed. I went to work, got ready, October 15th, 2018. The Now What intro was gifted to the universe.
We return you now to your regularly scheduled program.
Now, for those of you that don't know me, it's so nice to meet you, and I can't thank you enough for listening in. For those of you who do know me, thanks for always showing your girl some love, and I promise to all of you, we're going to have a great time on this show. We're going to share some laughs. We're going to reflect.
Gonna make a change for once in my life.
And most importantly, we're going to grow.
So let's go to the next evolution of Now What podcast, if you will. So first 5 episodes, you were telling your story. I think the next 5 or 7, you were letting others tell their stories. I guess your band of women. So maybe talk about a little bit about the background behind those episodes.
Yeah, so the original audience of the show that I was targeting were women. I wanted to start out specifically with like Latina women, but I didn't know very many Latina women or of their stories. But I have an amazing group of women who are badass women that are my group. We get together quarterly. We are just really authentic and have been so close over the past few years. So I took the next 5 or 6 episodes really interviewing them and them sharing their stories. They are truly, truly a gift. If you have not listened to those yet, go back and check them out. I promise you're going to love the gems that you're going to hear.
Yeah, I remember those quite well from the technical perspective. It was a madhouse for some of those early episodes, getting 4 different folks on a call to try to record. Yeah, anyway, that being said, let's go to the next stage. This is where Key comes in. And that Key was actually the first male, if you will, on the show. So Key, maybe talk a little bit about how you first came into the show.
Yeah. First of all, I was invited on the show as a guest, right? Just as a guest. Diane had reached out to me about a book, Black Privilege. And really, she was like, yeah, hey, I want you to read this book and I want you to come on this show, which at the time for me, I was actually going through in 2019. What a lot of people don't know is I was actually on this blitz to read 100 books in a year. So I was like trying to find stuff to read. It was getting toward the end of the year. I'd run out of stuff to read. And so she had, said, hey, I have this book. And I was like, yeah, I'll read it. And for me, it was just kind of helping me get toward my goal. I was not aware of Diane's Now What podcast until that invitation came on. So she asked me to, read the book, be a part of it. Of course, I agreed. And then once I agreed, went back and listened to probably every single episode before I even read the book. And I was like, wow, this is a awesome thing that she has going on here. So I was, I didn't know what to expect. I've been a part of a ton of book reviews. So for me, it was just kind of more of the same, except I'd be recording my answers, which is always a little bit daunting, a little bit. You just want to be really prepared. So I just remember reading the book, taking notes, and of course, That book was an awesome book. It's a book that I recommend everyone should read. It's called Black Privilege by Charlemagne the God. And, and I think, it was a great experience for me. I had I didn't realize that it was when I was invited, I didn't realize that this podcast was essentially, for women. Right. And so, but I do believe that once I went through all of the episodes and I was like, I was kind of concerned about where I would kind of fit in on this episode, but Diane made me feel extremely comfortable. Of course, LG, you did as well. And so, again, I was just kind of stoked to be a part of it. I didn't really have any high expectations or low expectations. I was just kind of, hey, this is just something else I would do. It's going to help me get closer to my goal of 100 books. And that's why I agreed so swiftly, probably.
I was going to ask if, or maybe you can expand, if you were, had you had any experience with podcasts? Were you part of the podcast world before then? Or was this your first podcast?
Yeah, so I do listen to the Joe Budden podcast. I would listen to that podcast sometimes on the way into work. And I would also sometimes listen to, other real estate podcasts such as Bigger Pockets. I would listen to the Bruce Norris podcast because that's a part of what I do as my day job. Right. So I would listen to those sort of podcasts. So it wasn't my first podcast. I was aware that podcasts were around, but I had never participated in one, nor had I even dreamed of participating in a podcast until you invited me, Diane.
Let's go to the next evolution of the show, which is really bringing Key in now, not necessarily as a guest, but as a content creator directly. And, this is kind of June of 2020. I would say the next evolution of Now What Podcasts to kind of where we're at today and the type of content that we're creating today really started, I would say more solidifying and kind of all three of us kind of coming together with a shared vision, if you will, and taking, Diane's original seed and original idea of sharing voices and elevating those beyond, just women and broadening it up and looking at what we've seen about the podcast community. We keep referencing Joe Budden. Well, name another Black or brown content creator in that space, right? Very difficult to name that. I'm sure we can if we really wanted, but I think we all get the point here. So I think, Key, now all three of us really coalesced, if you will, together and went on a content creation spree really in June of 2020 into where we're at today. So let's talk a little bit about that kind of transition and those episodes and the background behind those.
There was a period of 6 months from December of 2019 to June of 2020 where the Now What podcast was radio silent. Nothing was coming out and absolutely no one cared.
Yeah. So for the audience too, Key and I have been friends now for almost 20 years. So actually, this is not our first venture in creating content. We actually have created a lot of content in the form of music over the last 20 years. And we actually had a DJ business back in college. So, it was very natural to add him to the mix. Him and I have had lots of conversations, music, intellectual, philosophical, political. And so I think he adds new value and a different perspective in the voices we're trying to elevate on the show. So Key, episode 14, what's the background between, then and now?
Of course, what was happening at the time was, the murder of George Floyd had just happened. And of course, not just us, but the entire world, I feel, was outraged in the manner that this man had lost his life. And one of the things that Diane just mentioned was about how, our stories are being told from a certain perspective. It's a perspective that sometimes discounts the lifestyles, the experiences of Black and brown people. It just kind of, certain people want to talk about the facts of what happened, how, and, I was So that moment when we seen George Floyd lose his life, I think all of us, the interactivists and all of us, probably wanted to come out, which is why we saw a Black Lives Matter movement worldwide, right? Because I think a scene like that, if you can watch something like that and not want to take action, to me, you don't have a pulse. And if you do have a pulse, you definitely, again, I can't speak to those who, weren't activated or who weren't motivated. But what I will say is that watching that scene activated something in me. It activated something in probably all of us. And it really made us realize that even though we had come so far, we still had so far to go.
Fake records.
We were kind of dipping into it. What, if you had to say out of those 50 episodes, what is your favorite episode and why? Ladies first.
My absolute favorite episode, besides the intro, has to be episode 20, Conscious Rap and Hip Hop. I swear I could listen to this episode like on repeat. It is, we go hard and we get into conscious rap. We bring in my girl Frankie, who is just as conscious and aware of the history of her people. This was a learning experience for me. This was my opportunity. Like, this was my first moment of consciousness into what I had, a feeling about, but I wasn't able to really have someone point it out to me and make that connection. So we talked about They Schools by Dead Prez. We went into Kanye West. We went into really understanding the lyrics, the power of music, and how we use it to, tell our stories. And it's just an episode. I am ready to do another one.
Nice. That's a tough question, LG, and I'll tell you why. Because you look at all of these episodes, as you will, as our creations. It's almost like your kids. Like, which one is your favorite kid? You know what I'm saying? So I look at it like that. With that being said, though, one of the episodes where I felt, a lot of times what we do is we bring a set of information to our listeners that they may not be aware of, or that they may be aware of, but may, want some more details around, right? Episode 22 is the episode where I think I was schooled the most, really. That's, where we interviewed your girl Herman, and, she's from Ethiopia, and the episode is Hermaine. I apologize. Hermaine. Yeah, thank you. I apologize, Hermaine. But think you know Ethiopia and her people. In that episode, Hermaine was able to, first of all, she's super intelligent, and she's super knowledgeable, not just about, the happenings and what's going on here in America, but she's also very aware of the history of Ethiopia. And it's a very proud history, Ethiopia being one of the few countries that was never colonized by the crown or Europeans. And so I think that episode is one of the ones where I learned the most. It was fun from a recording perspective, probably a nightmare from an editing and putting together perspective, because we ran into a lot of issues there. But that's probably one of the episodes that sticks out the most to me, because that's where I learned the most from our guests.
Yeah. Let's go. Now what? Tell me what you're gonna do. Be yourself, be true, be you. Now what? Tell me what you're gonna do. Be yourself, be true, be you.
That's where we are. We have been on this amazing and awesome journey over the last 50 episodes, and it's been a great ride with you, LG, with you, Diane, and I'm looking forward to the next 50, to the next 100, to the next 1,000 episodes here. And of course, some ways that we're going to continue to grow is just, number one is audience participation, creating that two-way street between us and our listeners and getting them more involved, making this more of an interactive show, right? And the ways that we're looking to do that, and I think we all have talked about it, and that's what I'm super excited about. Number one is YouTube. That's a platform that's out there that we have really underutilized. Of course, the video aspect is something that we're dabbling with right now, and we're looking to get into that. And YouTube is something where we're going to continue to leverage, and we're going to, begin to really take hold of that and push our brand on that platform. So you can definitely expect more from us on YouTube. Okay. And then no worries. But then, looking at the next level is what we've talked about at Patreon, right? That's going to be a awesome way for us to connect with our fans, with our supporters, with our listeners on a much more intimate level, right? Where they can have much more, of a glimpse behind the scenes, where they can really interact with us on a personal level, and they can get deep with us, with this show and pushing it forward. But again, this is what I see for us in the future, is just continuing, of course, to develop our skills as speakers, our skills as business people, and of course, develop our relationship and cultivate this relationship that we have with our listeners, which I think is an awesome, awesome relationship, because we wouldn't be able to do any of this without them. So definitely am looking forward to the future.
So Lamont, what are some of the challenges with video, and what is it that we're really needing to get to that level?
Yeah, I think taking the show to video is a big topic internally that we've been talking about. And the main reason for our audience is you'll reach a larger audience and also have a more interactive audience, engaging content in the video format. But moving to a video format requires equipment, software that is totally different from the audio side. So it's an expensive endeavor, I should say, not only from a monetary side, but also time is different. And so I think it's a big focus for us, but the Patreon is that gateway, I think, for two ways. One, help us get to different platforms, which reach new audiences, but also, as Key and you alluded to, creating that two-way street of communication between those who support the podcast and also want to take a more active role in taking it into new audiences. And so lots of challenges with video, money being one of the big ones. It's very expensive to get that 4K camera that you need to really get your audience engaged into your video content. So, there's going to be some great other benefits of being a Now What Patreon. So these last 50 episodes, for example, listen to them now. Pretty soon, those are going to be only available. Our back catalog will be only available to our patrons. So listen while you can. Join the Patreon. You won't have to worry about it.
Now What is dedicated to topics and issues impacting the Black and Brown community, to elevate and empower our people, our voices, and our culture. We hope today's episode inspired you to have a Now What moment. You can hear music inspiration for today's episode on the Now What Radio Spotify playlist. Thanks for listening, and remember, if you want to support what we do, head on over to patreon.com/Now What Radio and join us. Until next time, stay inspired.